Listen carefully, because once you hear this story, you will never look at Yosemite the same way again. This isn't just a missing persons case. It's a trail of clues, left by silence, shadows, and a dog that returned from somewhere humans were never meant to go. 8 months after a mother and son vanished without a trace, their golden retriever walked out of the wilderness, alone. Mud dripping from his fur, a healed cut on his paw, too clean to be natural, his ribs showing, his eyes wide with something between fear and warning. He didn't wander. He went directly to a roadside motel, where he scratched at the metal door, as if begging someone to open it, before something caught up. The clerk recognized the dog instantly. Cooper, the same dog on the missing posters. The same dog search teams had given up hope of finding alive. But Cooper had survived, and whatever happened to him had left a mark deeper than the wound on his paw. When rangers arrived, Cooper didn't bark, didn't run. He simply walked toward the trees, then turned back, as if saying, "Come with me. See what I saw." But each time they stepped closer, he trembled, whined, refused to enter. It was as if the forest itself frightened him more than anything else. The search reopened. The first eerie clue appeared in a photo Darcy sent before vanishing. A hiking selfie. But zoomed in, a human-shaped shadow stood behind them. Still, silent. Watching. No one else was supposed to be on that trail. And from the moment investigators saw that figure, they understood one thing. Whatever was in that forest, Cooper had escaped from it. Darcy and Zach had not. Cooper stayed by the motel door for hours, as if waiting for someone familiar to step out of the forest and call his name, but no one came. Veterinarians examined him, expecting injuries from a wild animal, but the wound on his paw was clean, straight, precise, a slice that looked almost surgical, as if cut by a blade, not claws. That detail alone made investigators uneasy. When rangers returned to question the motel clerk, Cooper did something none of them expected. He trotted toward the parking lot, stopped at the edge of the trees, looked back, and let out a low, shaky whine. It wasn't random. It wasn't aimless. It was a warning and a guide. The search team followed. Cooper led them along the old El Portal trail, the same path Darcy and Zach had taken 8 months earlier. At first, everything looked normal. Boot prints, deer tracks, broken twigs from passing hikers. But 2 miles in, Cooper froze. His ears flattened, his tail tucked, his body lowered to the ground, as if the soil itself remembered something terrible. The rangers noticed strange marks on the trees. Scratches, but too high for a bear, too narrow for a cougar, too deep for any animal native to Yosemite. The deeper they walked, the quieter the forest became. Birdsong faded. Wind died. Even their own footsteps felt muffled, like the air was thick with something unseen. Then they found the first sign, a scrap of fabric, faded and torn, caught on a branch. Lab analysis later confirmed it. The cloth matched the sleeve of Darcy's hiking jacket, but the branch was nearly 8 feet above the ground. Too high for her to reach. Too high for a fall. Too high for anything natural. Something, or someone, had lifted her. Cooper whimpered when he saw the fabric, his entire body shaking, eyes fixed not on the cloth, but on the dark line of trees ahead. Whatever happened in that forest, he remembered, and he did not want to go farther. The rangers marked the area, but Cooper refused to move. He stayed rooted to the ground, staring into the forest, as if something inside was staring back. When they finally coaxed him forward, the trail began to change. Cooper's footprints, still faintly preserved from months before, became deeper, shorter, and closer together. Signs of running, signs of panic. Beside them, newer prints appeared. Large boot marks, heavy tread, worn soles. Not Zach's, not Darcy's, not from any search team. Someone else had been out there with them. As they progressed, the forest grew unnaturally silent. No wind, no insects. Even their radios crackled with static whenever they stepped deeper into the canyon. Then the trees opened into a narrow ravine, a place locals quietly called the Echoing Mile, a place tourists never reached, and maps barely acknowledged. That was where they found it. Darcy and Zach's campsite, not scattered like a panicked escape, not torn apart like an animal attack, but arranged. A burned-out fire ring, a half-collapsed tent, Zach's backpack laid open in a perfect line, each item placed neatly beside the next. Water bottle, compass, flashlight, journal, too neat, too intentional, too controlled. Inside the tent, dust-covered but intact, they discovered Zach's notebook. The first pages were cheerful. Sketches of mountains, notes about their hike, jokes he wrote for his mom. But the later entries changed. The handwriting became rushed, uneven, shaking. One line read, "We heard footsteps last night. Not animals. Two-legged." Another, "Cooper keeps growling at the trees. Mom tells me not to look." And the final entry, smeared with dirt and torn at the corner, "If we don't make it back, follow the dog." Cooper whimpered when they touched the journal, as if the memory hurt him, as if the forest still remembered them too. The rangers stood in the quiet clearing, holding Zach's final words, feeling the weight of every letter. Follow the dog. Cooper paced in circles, sniffing the ground, then the air, then the trees, as if trying to decide which memory hurt the least. Finally, he chose a direction, not the trail, not the river, but a narrow split between two boulders, almost hidden. As if the forest tried to erase it, the passage dropped into a steep decline, the air colder, the light dimmer, the silence heavier. Cooper paused at the entrance, looked back at the rangers, and let out a soft bark, more like a plea than a command. They followed. For nearly half a mile, the walls of the canyon tightened around them. Radios hummed with static. Compass needles spun, never pointing the same way twice. Then they heard it, a sound none of them expected. Breathing, slow, deep, above them. The rangers lifted their flashlights. The beam shook in their hands. High on the canyon wall, 10 feet above ground, was a fresh scrape. Long, jagged, and too wide for any known animal. Something had climbed across the rock. Recently, Cooper backed away, ears pinned flat, his body trembling with the terror that came from memory, not instinct. He tugged at his leash, pulling them farther into the canyon, toward a small stone ledge, overlooking a hidden drop. There, in the dirt, they found more clues: a torn shoelace, a metal zipper pull, and strands of golden retriever fur. Cooper's fur. He had been here. He had fought here. He had survived something. Barely. The ranger knelt beside him, checked the healed cut on his paw, and realized something horrifying. The angle of the wound, the depth, the shape. It wasn't just a slice, it was restraint. As if someone had held him down, cut him loose, and let him go. The question burned in all their minds. Why free the dog? And why take the mother and son? Before anyone spoke, Cooper suddenly lifted his head, staring into the darkest part of the canyon. His body stiffened. His fur rose. And then, in the absolute silence, they heard it too. A faint echo, footsteps, 2 sets, walking, slowly, deliberately, not toward them, but circling, watching, as if whatever had taken Darcy and Zach had returned. The footsteps stopped as suddenly as they began. The canyon fell silent again, the kind of silence that felt aware, as if the darkness itself was listening. Cooper pressed against the ranger's leg, whining low, urging them to move, to leave, to run. But protocol demanded they document everything. One ranger took a step forward, and the canyon answered. A pebble fell from above, bouncing off the rock, rolling to a stop beside his boot. Not dropped, not kicked, thrown. Every flashlight beam shot upward. Nothing. Just the jagged canyon wall, empty, motionless, waiting. The lead ranger whispered, "Something's toying with us." Cooper growled for the first time since they found him. A deep, broken sound, the kind animals make when they recognize a predator. He pulled again, this time harder, dragging them toward the far side of the canyon, where an opening yawned like the mouth of a cave. It wasn't marked on any map. It wasn't listed in any survey. Inside, the air was damp and cold enough to sting their lungs. The cave was narrow, forcing them to move single file, the walls brushing their shoulders. 20 feet in, the floor sloped downward, into a chamber. There they found it. A single shoe, small, blue, with a faded cartoon rocket on the side. Zach's! The team froze. The cave seemed to pulse with their heartbeat, every breath echoing too loud, too distorted. Cooper sniffed the shoe, whimpered, then backed away, tail tucked so tightly it nearly touched his belly. He didn't want to go deeper. He didn't think anyone should. But the rangers pressed on. The chamber narrowed again, leading to a deeper passage. And there, etched into the stone, they saw more marks. Not claw marks, not knife marks. Symbols, carved with precision. Sharp lines, repeating shapes. The same pattern again and again, as if something used the cave walls to communicate or to warn. The ranger photographed them, but the moment the flash went off, the cave reacted. A distant sound echoed through the passage. A dragging, scraping noise, slow and heavy, as if something enormous was shifting in the dark. Cooper's whine rose into a frantic bark. The rangers knew instantly. Whatever had made that sound was awake. The scraping sound grew louder, slow, heavy, rhythmic. Not the movement of an animal, not the movement of a person. Something else. Something that understood the cave better than they did. The rangers formed a tight line, flashlights trembling in their hands. Cooper planted his paws, refusing to take another step forward, barking in short, panicked bursts. The lead ranger crouched and placed a hand on Cooper's head. The dog flinched, not from the touch, but from the sound that followed. A breath, long, wet, exhaled from deep within the passage. It didn't sound human. It didn't sound like anything that should exist in Yosemite. The ranger whispered, "We're leaving now." But before they could turn back, the cave answered again. A low rumble, not a growl, not a voice, a vibration through the stone. The walls seemed to hum, dust shaking loose from the ceiling, small pebbles rolling across the floor. Then, a glint of metal. The ranger nearest the wall spotted it. A bracelet, half buried in the dirt. He pulled it out slowly, heart pounding. "Darcy wore this," he whispered. It wasn't broken. It wasn't torn off. It was placed there, deliberately. Cooper whined louder, body trembling so hard his collar rattled. The scraping sound stopped. Silence. The rangers held their breath, listening, waiting. Then a shadow moved, not from their flashlights, not from any of them. Something slid across the far wall of the chamber, just beyond the edge of their light. Its shape wrong, its height impossible. One ranger stepped back, boot crunching on loose stone. The shadow froze, as if it heard him, as if it understood. The temperature dropped sharply, cold enough to sting their fingers, their breath turning white in the beam of their lights. The lead ranger hissed, "Everyone out! Don't run! Don't turn your back!" But Cooper didn't listen. He bolted, tail tucked, claws scraping the rock, barking in raw, terrified panic. His reaction broke the team's discipline. They ran, flashlights jerking, gear clattering, footsteps pounding through the narrow passage. Behind them, the cave came alive with sound. The scrape, the breath, the vibration of something huge, shifting in the dark, following. Not fast, not rushed, slow, purposeful, like it knew they couldn't escape. They burst out of the cave mouth, gasping for air, scrambling across the rocky ledge as Cooper sprinted ahead, his paws slipping on loose gravel. Behind them, the cave exhaled, a deep, hollow gust of cold air, as if something enormous had inhaled their scent and was letting it out. The rangers didn't stop, not to look, not to breathe, not to think. They followed Cooper down the canyon path, their flashlights slicing through the dark, their boots slipping on damp stone. Only when they reached a wider clearing did they dare to slow down. Cooper skidded to a stop, panting hard, his eyes locked on the canyon behind them. He didn't blink, didn't look away. As if expecting something to emerge, the lead ranger raised his radio. Static, violent, screeching static, as if the canyon itself was jamming the signal. Then, the static stopped. The radio clicked. A voice whispered through it. Not words, not human. A long, broken exhale. The same sound they heard inside the cave. The ranger dropped the radio, stumbling back, heart slamming against his ribs. "Keep moving," he ordered, voice shaking. "Do not stop for anything." Cooper led them deeper into the forest, avoiding the main trail, choosing narrow side paths, as if he remembered exactly where not to go. After nearly half a mile, he slowed, nose down, sniffing the ground intensely. Then he whined, a soft, mournful sound, and sat beside a fallen tree. The rangers searched the area, expecting more tracks, more clues. What they found instead froze their blood. A tree trunk, split clean down the middle, not broken, not snapped. Cut! A perfect vertical slice, as if done with a blade, far sharper than any tool humans carry. The exposed wood was smooth, almost polished, and cold to the touch. Too cold. The ranger pressed his palm against it and jerked his hand back with a gasp. "It's freezing," he whispered. "In the middle of summer." Cooper backed away, tail tucked, ears flat, eyes fixed on the dark woods behind them. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then a faint thump echoed through the trees. Then another. Slow, heavy, measured. Something was walking. Not toward them, but circling. Hunting. The lead ranger swallowed hard. "We're not alone out here," he said. Cooper already knew that. And whatever he had survived 8 months ago wasn't done with them yet. The thumping footsteps grew clearer, slow, deliberate, circling them with purpose. The rangers tightened their formation, flashlights shaking in their hands, sweeping the tree line for any sign of movement. But the forest gave them nothing. No shape, no eyes, no shadow, only sound. Cooper pressed low to the ground, ears flat, body trembling so violently, his collar jingled in rapid bursts. The lead ranger whispered, "Everyone stay close, eyes open." But the next sound wasn't footsteps. It was humming. A low vibration, so deep they felt it in their ribs. The trees shivered. The soil trembled. A flock of birds erupted from the branches overhead, taking off all at once, as if fleeing something unseen. Cooper whined, a desperate warning sound, and bolted toward another narrow path, one none of the rangers recognized. He didn't look back. He didn't wait. He ran like he knew. Staying meant death. The team followed, branches whipping against their arms, flashlights bouncing wildly. Halfway down the path, the humming stopped. Silence swallowed the forest again. But silence was worse, because silence meant it was close. Cooper skidded to a halt at a small ridge, overlooking a dried creek bed. He sniffed the air, then the ground, then looked up at the rangers with wide, terrified eyes. Something was down there. They descended carefully, boots crunching on dry leaves, heartbeats loud in their own ears. At the bottom, they found a strange pattern in the soil. Not footprints, not drag marks. Symbols, circles, lines, sharp angles carved into the dirt, as if traced by something with claws or fingers. The same symbols they saw in the cave, repeating, layered, fresh. The lead ranger knelt, his breath shaking. "These weren't here before," he said. "This is recent." Before anyone could respond, a branch snapped behind them. Not a twig, a thick branch, broken with force. They spun around, lights cutting through the trees. Nothing. Then, a whisper, not from a person, not from their radios, from everywhere at once, a low, distorted voice, stretching through the darkness, like it was crawling across the air. "Go back!" The rangers froze. Cooper whimpered, pressed himself against the ground, and covered his head with his paws. The whisper came again, this time closer. "We're not safe." The lead ranger's voice cracked as he spoke. "Who's there?" The forest answered with a sound none of them would ever forget, a deep, guttural growl echoing from every direction, followed by the unmistakable crunch of something massive stepping toward them, slow, steady, unstoppable. The growl rolled through the trees, deep enough to vibrate the ground beneath their boots. Cooper let out a broken yelp, scrambling backward, trying to hide beneath the fallen branches. The rangers formed a tight circle. Flashlights pointed outward, breathing shallow and shaken. Something massive moved through the woods, but the darkness kept it hidden. Only the sound betrayed it. The crunch of leaves, the snap of branches, the slow, dragging breath of something alive and aware. The lead ranger whispered, "Do not run. If we run, we're prey." But their bodies wanted to run. Every instinct screamed for it. Then, a heavy thud. Something stepped into the dried creek bed behind them. They spun around. Their flashlights struck empty space, but the shadows shifted, like something huge was standing just beyond the edge of the light, refusing to be revealed. The second ranger raised his weapon. "Identify yourself," he shouted. The forest answered with silence. Then, a handprint appeared in the dirt beside them, pressed down with deliberate force. Not an animal's, not human. It had 5 long shapes, like fingers, but too long, too thin, too curved. The imprint sank nearly 2 inches into the soil. Whatever made it was impossibly strong. Cooper whined and backed away, nudging the lead ranger's leg, begging him to move. But before anyone could react, another sound cut through the clearing, a sharp metallic ringing, like metal scraping against stone. The rangers swung their lights toward the noise and saw a flash of something reflect the beam, silver, smooth, moving. The reflection vanished instantly, pulled back into the dark as if hiding from the light. The second ranger's voice cracked. "That's not an animal. Nothing here moves like that." The air grew colder. The humming returned, vibrating through the ground, up their legs, into their chests. Cooper's bark broke into a howl, long and trembling, echoing into the canyon. The growl answered, closer now. Right behind the tree line, the ranger stepped back, weapons raised, lights trembling. The lead ranger whispered, "It's driving us somewhere." The second ranger swallowed hard. Why? Before he could finish, the trees behind them shifted. Not from wind, but from something pushing through them. Branches bent. Leaves shook. A shape moved. Tall. Silent. Wrong. Cooper bolted. No hesitation. No warning. He ran toward a narrow break in the trees, barking frantically, almost screaming. The lead ranger yelled, "Follow the dog! Move!" They sprinted after him, crashing through the undergrowth as something enormous stepped into the spot. They had been standing seconds before. The ground shook under its weight, and for the first time, they heard it clearly. A voice. Not human, not animal. A whisper scraped through the trees. "Leave now." They didn't look back. Branches whipped against their faces. Roots snagged their boots. But fear pushed them forward, chasing Cooper as he tore through the darkness. Behind them, the whisper rose again. "Leave now." Not angry, not threatening. Warning, the kind of warning something gives when it knows what hunts in these woods and knows it's coming. Cooper reached a fork in the trail and hesitated for the first time, whining, sniffing the air, then darted left toward a steep incline. The rangers followed, lungs burning, flashlights jerking wildly. Halfway up the slope, the humming returned. But this time, it wasn't distant. It was beneath them. The ground vibrated. Pebbles rolled downhill. The low pulse grew stronger, as if something below the soil was shifting, awakening, or moving upward. Cooper barked frantically and sprinted to the top of the incline. When the rangers scrambled up after him, they froze. The trees opened into a small clearing. But the clearing wasn't empty. In the center stood a massive boulder. Split clean in half, the cut was smooth. Perfect. Too perfect. As if carved by the same impossible force that split the tree earlier. On the surface of the stone, symbols were etched into the rock. The same symbols from the cave, but larger, deeper, older. The lead ranger approached, hand shaking, and traced one with his glove. The symbol pulsed. A faint glow flickered beneath the stone, like light trapped inside. The second ranger staggered back. "What the hell is this?" Before anyone could speak, Cooper began to howl, not at the boulder, not at the symbols, at the forest behind them. The rangers turned and saw two lights, small, white, perfectly round, hovering between the trees. Eyes, not animal eyes, not human eyes, reflecting their flashlights, but not blinking, not moving, just watching. The humming intensified. The ground shook harder. Dust rose from the cracked boulder. Cooper's howling turned desperate, as if he knew this exact moment, this exact place. And what came next? The eyes slowly shifted left, following the ranger's slightest movement. Then, a second pair of eyes appeared above the first. Higher, much higher, at least 8 feet off the ground. The lead ranger whispered, voice barely audible. There's more than one." The forest held its breath. 4 eyes watched them from the tree line, unblinking, white, glowing with an unnatural stillness that made every instinct in the rangers' bodies scream to retreat. Cooper backed up slowly, ears flat, fur raised, his growl low and trembling. The lead ranger whispered, Don't move. Don't provoke it. But the forest answered for them. A low creaking sound. Wood bending, branches shifting. As something massive stepped closer, the eyes disappeared. Not by closing, by lowering, as if the creature was dropping to all fours. The second ranger raised his light and swept the beam across the trees. Nothing. Only darkness, too thick for the beam to penetrate. As if the light was swallowed whole, the humming beneath the ground intensified, shaking small stones loose, dust lifting into the air like ash. The split boulder behind them vibrated, a faint crack spreading across its surface, glowing faintly from inside. Cooper barked sharply. One single command. Move. He darted toward another narrow path, one barely recognizable as a trail. The rangers followed, lungs burning, boots sliding on loose soil. Behind them, a sound tore through the clearing. Not a growl, not a roar, but a deep bone-shaking thud, as if something enormous had landed on the ground. Trees snapped. Branches rained down. The forest shook. They didn't look back. Couldn't. Cooper led them downhill, toward a thicker patch of brush. The air was colder here, almost icy, their breaths visible in front of their faces. The lead ranger gasped. This temperature, this isn't possible. The second ranger slowed. Wait, listen. They stopped. Silence. Then, a faint tapping sound. Rhythmic, steady, like fingers drumming against hollow wood. Tap, tap, tap. The sound circled them. Cooper whimpered and pushed against the lead ranger's leg, trying to force him back onto the trail. The tapping grew louder, faster, multiplying, as if more than one creature was making it. Tap, 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 tap. Then it stopped. A whisper drifted through the trees. Same distorted voice as before, but clearer this time. I'll leave. Before dark. The rangers froze. None dared speak, but Cooper seemed to understand. He spun around, darted down the trail, and barked sharply. Not fear this time, but urgency. The lead ranger whispered, Follow him now. They ran again, branches slashing their arms, the forest shifting around them like a living maze. Then the second ranger looked back, and instantly wished he hadn't. For the first time, he saw it. A shape, tall, bent, limbs too long, body too thin, moving through the trees with impossible silence, its white eyes fixed directly on him. It wasn't running. It didn't need to. It was following, knowing exactly how this would end. The second ranger stumbled, nearly falling as he tore his eyes away from the creature. Don't look back! The lead ranger shouted. Just run! But the forest made running impossible. Roots rose like grips from the soil. Branches clawed at their jackets. The ground sloped unpredictably, as if the whole terrain shifted beneath their boots. Cooper sprinted ahead, weaving through the brush with frantic purpose, glancing back only to ensure they were following. The humming beneath the earth returned. Stronger, closer. No longer distant pulses, but heavy vibrations, like something massive burrowed beneath them. The second ranger gasped. It's under us, whatever it is, it's moving under us. The ground trembled. Small ripples shot across the dirt, as if something underground was pushing upward. Cooper barked sharply, then veered right, toward a fallen tree bridging a narrow ravine. The ravine was deep, dark, a long shadow dividing the forest. One wrong step, and they'd vanish into the black below. But Cooper leapt onto the fallen trunk, balanced, and scrambled across. The rangers had no choice. They followed. Halfway across, the humming peaked. The log vibrated beneath their feet, dust shaking loose, bits of bark cracking away and tumbling into the darkness below. Move, move! The lead ranger yelled. They sprinted, boots slipping, arms one-milling for balance. Behind them, a colossal thud echoed, not from above, from below, as if something had slammed into the underside of the ravine. The log jumped, lifting a full inch from the impact. The second ranger screamed, clung to the trunk, then forced himself forward. Legs shaking violently, they reached the other side and dove off the log just as it shook again. A violent jolt that snapped several feet of the trunk clean in half. Wood splintered. Fragments rained down into the ravine. Something below growled, a low, resonant sound, so deep it rattled their bones. Cooper barked wildly, pacing back and forth, then tore off through the brush again. The rangers followed, gasping, panting, sweat stinging their eyes. But then, the forest opened into a clearing, a pond, still black, perfectly circular, as if carved rather than formed by nature. Mist coiled above its surface, cold enough to sting their throats. Cooper stopped at the edge, ears up, body tense. The lead ranger whispered, "What is this place?" The second ranger stepped closer, but froze. Reflected in the water, behind their silhouettes, was a tall shape, not one of them, not human, standing directly behind them, watching them, its eyes glowing white beneath the mist. The reflection moved, but the surface of the water did not ripple. None of them turned around. They only watched the reflection in the pond, a tall, thin shape standing behind them, its white eyes glowing through the mist, unblinking, waiting. The second ranger whispered, "It's right behind us." But the water showed something worse. A second reflection, smaller, standing beside the first. Two shapes, two sets of eyes. Cooper backed up slowly, step by step, his body trembling, his growl barely a breath. The lead ranger whispered, "Don't run, don't turn, move on my signal." But before he could count, the reflections changed. They didn't walk. They didn't shift. They slid closer across the water, like the distance between them was being erased. Ripples spread across the pond, but the reflections stayed perfectly clear, as if untouched by the movement. "Now," the lead ranger said, "back away slowly." They stepped back from the water, hearts pounding, breathing shallow. Cooper reached the tree line first, ears pinned flat, ready to bolt. Then the pond erupted. Water exploded upward, a sheet of black rising into the air, then crashing down in a violent splash. The rangers spun, but the shapes were gone. The pond went still, mist curling quietly over the surface. A heavy thud echoed in the forest. Then another. Branches snapped. Something large was circling the pond, moving with purpose. Not hunting. Herding. The second ranger gasped. "It's pushing us somewhere." Cooper barked sharply and darted into a tight trail. The rangers followed, branches slicing their arms, the forest twisting into unnatural angles. Roots curled up from the ground, air turning colder, their breath visible. Then a faint glow appeared ahead. A clearing. Cooper sprinted toward it, barking with desperate urgency. The rangers reached the opening and froze. A backpack lay in the center, half buried in leaves, small, blue. The faded rocket patch still on the side. Zach's backpack. Inside was a torn page from his journal. In shaky handwriting, "We hid here. Mom said it will find us. Don't stay. Don't stop. Keep moving." At the bottom, smeared in dirt, "Cooper knows where she is." The rangers stared at the backpack, their breath frosting in the air, their hands shaking as the reality sank in. Zach had been here, alive, hiding, running. And Cooper? Cooper had been with him until the very end. The lead ranger whispered, "Where did she tell you to go, Zach?" As if answering, Cooper nudged the backpack, sniffed it, then turned sharply toward the far edge of the clearing. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stared, pointing with his whole body. The trees in that direction were denser. The branches twisted, forming a dark tunnel of shadow. Cold air seeped out, carrying a faint metallic smell. The second ranger swallowed hard. "It wants us to follow." Cooper took a single step forward, looked back at them, and whined softly, a plea, a command, a memory. They moved carefully, weapons lowered but ready, flashlights slicing through the dark. The forest changed again as they entered. The air felt heavier, like the whole place was holding its breath. Symbols began to appear on the trees. The same sharp lines and circles from the cave, etched deep into the bark. Fresh cuts, fresh warnings. Cooper slowed, sniffing each mark, ears twitching as if tracking a pattern only he understood. Then they heard it. A voice. Faint, fragile, almost human. "Help!" The rangers froze. The voice drifted through the trees, soft, unsteady, like someone calling from far underground. The second ranger whispered, "That sounded like a child." The lead ranger tightened his grip on the flashlight. "Zach? Help, please." The voice cracked on the last word. Weak and desperate, Cooper whined loudly, pacing, pawing at the ground, urging them forward. They pushed deeper into the forest, following the voice, their breaths sharp and quick. But then, the voice changed. It repeated the same word, the same tone, the same crack. Over and over, exactly the same. "Help, help, help." Not natural, not human. A mimic. The second ranger's voice shook. "It's copying him." Suddenly, the forest went silent again. No wind. No echo. Just the cold. Then something moved in the dark ahead. A small figure, crouched beside a tree, shoulders shaking, a child-sized silhouette. The rangers lifted their lights. Slow, careful, and the figure turned, not with curiosity, with a snap. Its head twisted too far, too fast, white eyes glowing in the beam. Not human, not Zach. Cooper barked violently, lunging between the creature and the rangers, teeth bared. The silhouette jerked to its feet, its movement stiff, unnatural, and scuttled back into the shadows, melting into the trees like it had never been there at all. Silence returned. The lead ranger exhaled shakily. "It's leading us deeper." On purpose. Cooper stepped forward again, nose to the ground, pulling them toward the direction the mimic fled, wherever it had gone. Darcy had gone before them. Cooper stood rigid at the tree line, nose low, ears twitching, tracking something none of the rangers could hear. The forest around them felt wrong. Too still, too cold, as if every living thing was holding its breath. The lead ranger whispered, "That thing wasn't Zach. It was using his shape." The second ranger nodded shakily. "It wanted us to follow it." Cooper growled softly, then moved forward again, following a faint trail that twisted between crooked trees. Symbols were carved everywhere now. On bark, on stone, even into the packed dirt. Fresh marks, fresh warnings. The deeper they went, the more the trees bent inward, forming a tunnel of branches that blocked the sky. The air grew colder still, their breath drifting in white clouds. Then, a sound, soft, small, real. A faint sob, a human sob. The rangers froze. Cooper lifted his head. Ears focused, tail stiff. The sob came again, echoing between the twisted trunks. A woman's voice. Please, help. The lead ranger whispered. That sounds like Darcy. Cooper barked once, then sprinted toward the sound. The rangers followed, hearts pounding, branches tearing at their sleeves. They entered a clearing, small, circular, surrounded by trees whose trunks twisted like ropes. In the center lay a torn jacket. Darcy's jacket. The ranger picked it up slowly, turning it over in his hands. Cold, wet, no blood. But the sobbing stopped. Instantly, the forest went dead quiet. Too quiet. Cooper stiffened, fur raised, staring into the trees. A shadow moved between the trunks. Tall, slender, swaying slightly, like it floated instead of walked. The sobbing voice returned, but this time, it came from behind them. Please, don't leave me. They spun around. Nothing. No woman, no figure, just trees. The second ranger's voice cracked. It's copying her, too. The lead ranger clenched his jaw. We're getting close. It knows. The forest trembled softly, as if something massive shifted underground. Cooper stepped forward, nose to the dirt, sniffing rapidly. Then he turned left, toward a narrow path, barely wide enough for a person. He growled, deep. Warning. Serious. The rangers understood. This was the path Darcy had taken. And whatever she found at the end was still waiting there. The narrow path felt different the moment they stepped onto it. Colder, quieter, as if the forest was shrinking around them, pressing in on every side. Cooper walked slowly now, not running, not bolting, moving with careful precision, like he remembered every step, and feared repeating a mistake. The rangers followed single file, flashlights cutting thin beams through the dark. The trees twisted tighter overhead, their branches knitting together, until the sky vanished completely. Only darkness, only cold. After several minutes, the path opened into a long corridor of stone. Two high walls rising on both sides, carved with symbols, thousands of them, layered over each other. The lead ranger ran a hand over one. The groove was smooth, too precise for any natural tool. The second ranger whispered, Darcy came through here. Cooper whined softly, nudging something on the ground. A shoe print, small, fresh, a child's. Zach's! The rangers felt a jolt of hope, but it vanished when they noticed the second set of prints. Longer, deeper, not shaped like a boot, not shaped like a foot. Something with long toes or claws. And it was walking beside Zach's prints, not chasing, guiding. The lead ranger exhaled shakily. It wasn't hunting them. It was bringing them somewhere. Before they could speak again, a faint sound echoed through the stone corridor. A tap, light, rhythmic. Tap, 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 Cooper growled. Stepping back, ears flat. The tapping grew louder, closer, echoing unnaturally, as if the sound bounced from all directions at once. Then the tapping stopped. A whisper slid through the corridor. This way? The voice was clearer than before, soft, almost gentle. A woman's voice. The rangers froze. The second ranger whispered, That sounded exactly like Darcy. Cooper snarled suddenly, hackles raised, teeth bared at the far end of the corridor. Something moved there. A small silhouette, crouched low, motionless, a child-sized shape. Zach? The lead ranger lifted his flashlight slowly, breath trembling. The beam reached the figure, and the shape twisted, jerking its head toward them. White eyes, too bright, too wide. Not Zach, not human. Cooper barked violently, lunging between the rangers and the creature. The figure hissed, a sharp, broken sound, then crawled backward on twisted limbs, vanishing into a crack in the stone wall, as if the rock swallowed it. Silence fell again, thick and heavy. The Rangers stood frozen, hearts hammering, until Cooper finally took a cautious step forward, nose to the ground. He found a new scent, something familiar. He barked once, short and urgent, then began moving down the corridor. The lead ranger tightened his grip on his weapon. We followed the dog, no matter what. They pressed deeper into the stone passage, toward whatever waited for them in the dark, toward Darcy. The corridor narrowed as they moved deeper, the air turning sharp and stale, like the breath of something ancient, trapped beneath the earth. Cooper walked with his head low, sniffing every few steps, pausing whenever the scent faded, then finding it again with a soft whine. The Rangers followed, weapons ready, flashlights trembling in their hands. The stone walls around them changed. The symbols became larger, carved deeper, some gouged violently, as if something had scraped them with claws. The second ranger whispered, "These markings, they're not warnings anymore. They're instructions." The lead ranger frowned. "Instructions for what?" A sound answered him, a soft, dragging scrape. Far ahead, Cooper froze. Ears pricked, tail tucked. The scrape came again, slow, heavy, like something pulling itself across stone. Tap, drag, tap, drag. The ranger's breath quickened. Cooper whimpered, then nudged a thin crack in the wall, barely wide enough for them to slip through. He wanted them off the main path. The lead ranger whispered, "He's trying to avoid something." They followed the dog into the crack, squeezing sideways until the corridor opened into a tiny chamber. Inside, the air was warmer. Still, quiet. Too quiet. On the ground lay a torn piece of fabric. Darcy's. The lead ranger crouched and picked it up. It smelled like damp earth, like sweat, like fear. Before he could speak, a faint voice drifted into the chamber. "Please, help me." Darcy's voice. Hushed. Desperate. But Cooper didn't move toward the sound. He backed away from it, growling. The second ranger whispered, "That's not her, is it?" The lead ranger shook his head slowly. "It's trying to pull us back into the corridor." The voice grew louder, echoing, repeating the same line. "Help me, help me, help me." Each repetition identical, like a recording trapped in the dark. Cooper barked sharply, spinning toward another narrow path, on the opposite side of the chamber. This one sloped downward, into complete darkness. The lead ranger aimed his light down it, but the beam seemed to die mid-air, swallowed by blackness. Cooper barked again, urgently, tail stiff. "We go," the lead ranger said. They squeezed through the opening and began descending. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. The stone turned damp, then wet, their boots splashing in shallow water. Something hums beneath the floor. A steady vibration. Alive. Cooper stopped suddenly. Ahead of him, the darkness shifted. Not light, not movement. A presence. A silhouette stood at the bottom of the slope. Tall. Still. Waiting. A woman. Hair matted. Shoulders trembling. Head down. Darcy. The Rangers froze. Cooper took one cautious step forward, whined softly. The woman lifted her head, but her eyes were wrong, glossy, white, empty. She opened her mouth, and a voice that wasn't hers spilled out. "You shouldn't have followed." The figure stepped closer, her movements wrong, gliding instead of walking, her head tilting too far to the side, as her neck cracked one bone at a time. Cooper growled violently, placing himself between the rangers and the woman. The lead ranger whispered, "That's not Darcy. Don't trust anything it shows us." Her white, empty eyes didn't blink, didn't focus, didn't feel human. The figure opened her mouth, and a voice that didn't belong to her spilled out. "Why are you here?" The second ranger trembled. "We need to move." "Cooper knows the way." The false Darcy drifted forward, feet never breaking the water, shadow not matching her shape. But she didn't chase them. She only watched. Cooper barked once sharply and sprinted around her, toward a bend in the tunnel. The rangers followed, hearts pounding, boots splashing through the ankle-deep water. Behind them, the mimic whispered again, its voice shifting between Darcy's and Zach's. "You can't save Kerr." The air grew warmer as they descended, the stone walls sweating with moisture. The humming beneath the floor returned, vibrating the ground and their bones. Cooper stopped at a dim chamber ahead. Blue light seeped from cracks in the walls, illuminating something metallic in the center. A cage, small, rusted, bars bent from the inside, deep scratches gouged in the floor. The lead ranger knelt beside it, hands shaking, fingernail marks. Inside lay a torn backpack strap and a tiny sock. "Zach's," the second ranger whispered. "They held him here, but why leave this behind?" Cooper pressed his nose to the cage bars, whining with a pain the rangers had never heard from him. Then a metallic clatter echoed down the tunnel. They turned. The false Darcy stood in the entrance, blocking the only exit, her limbs hanging loose, her face blank. She opened her mouth wider than any jaw should open, and spoke in Zach's broken voice. "Don't leave me!" Cooper barked furiously, snapping at the air. The mimic's body twitched, then dropped to all fours, limbs bending backward, fingers digging into the stone. The lead ranger yelled, "Run!" Cooper bolted toward a narrow tunnel behind the cage. The rangers sprinted after him, water splashing high around their legs. Behind them, the mimic shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, and scuttled after them on all fours, its claws scraping sparks along the rock. The tunnel ahead narrowed, and the chase began. The tunnel tightened around them, the ceiling dropping low enough that the rangers had to crouch as they ran. Cooper led the way, his paws splashing through the shallow water, his breath sharp and frantic. Behind them, the mimic's claws scraped against the stone, getting closer, gaining speed. Tap, 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 scrape. Tap, 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 scrape. The sound echoed through the tunnel, like something crawling just inches behind them. The second ranger gasped. "It's faster than us." The lead ranger snapped. "Don't look back, go!" A sudden shriek ripped through the passage, so loud it rattled dust from the ceiling. The false Darcy was close enough now that they could hear her breath. Wet, broken, inhuman. Cooper veered right, into a tighter passage they hadn't seen. The rangers dove after him, squeezing through just as the mimic lunged. Her clawed hand scraped the wall beside them, leaving deep gouges, missing the second ranger's leg by inches. The creature slammed into the stone, body twisting unnaturally as it tried to force itself in, its white eyes glowing through the gap. But the tunnel was too narrow, too tight. It couldn't follow. The mimic let out a guttural hiss, then retreated slowly, its fingers dragging along the stone. As it backed into the darkness, silence returned, thick and cold. The rangers collapsed against the walls, gasping for air. Cooper didn't rest. He stood perfectly still, ears up, listening. The lead ranger whispered, "We've shaken it. For now." The tunnel ahead sloped downward, the air turning warmer again. A faint light glowed at the end of the passage. Not blue like before, not natural light either. A pulsing orange glow. Fire! They approached slowly. Weapons raised, flashlights sweeping the ground. The tunnel opened into a wide cavern. Torches, handmade, lined the walls, burning with steady flames. Someone had been here recently. In the center of the cavern stood a wooden structure. A shelter? A trap? A hiding place? No, a shrine, built from branches, stones, and scraps of fabric. In the middle hung a necklace, a small silver charm. The lead ranger's voice cracked. "This is Darcy's necklace, the one she wore every day." Cooper whined, pacing anxiously around the shrine, sniffing the ground. Then he barked once, sharply, at a small tunnel on the far side of the cavern. A thin draft blew out of it, cold, metallic. The second ranger stepped closer, aiming his flashlight into the darkness. His breath caught. Footprints, small ones, Zach's footprints. Leading deeper into the tunnel, the lead ranger steadied his voice. "He's alive! He has to be!" Cooper barked again, urgently, and sprinted into the tunnel without waiting. The rangers followed, but none of them noticed the shadow that stepped into the cavern behind them, silent and tall, its white eyes watching, waiting. The new tunnel was tighter than the others, barely wide enough for one person at a time. The air inside was damp and cold, smelling of metal and old soil. Cooper slowed his pace, moving carefully, sniffing every few feet. His tail was low, body tense, as if he knew this part of the tunnels too well. The rangers followed in single file, flashlights pointed forward, boots splashing softly in the shallow water. Zach's footprints continued ahead, small, uneven, as if he had been running one moment and stumbling the next. The second ranger whispered. He was scared. Really scared. The lead ranger answered quietly. "We're close." Cooper wouldn't be this focused unless... A sudden clang echoed through the tunnel. Metal hitting stone, loud, sharp, deliberate. Cooper froze. The rangers raised their weapons instinctively, flashlights trembling. Another clang, closer, then a dragging sound, like someone pulling a chain through water. Cooper growled, low and shaking, eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. The lead ranger whispered, "Zach, is that you?" Silence. Then a small voice answered, weak, hoarse, barely human. "Help, please." "Zach!" Cooper surged forward, barking desperately. The rangers raced after him as the tunnel curved sharply to the right, opening into a small chamber. There, huddled against the far wall, was a figure, small, thin, shivering. A child. Zach! His clothes were torn, face pale, eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. When the flashlights hit him, he lifted his head slowly. And this time, they saw real eyes, brown, human, terrified. The second ranger dropped to his knees, voice cracking. "Zach, we're here to help you!" But Zach shook his head violently, tears streaming down his cheeks. No, you have to go." "It's coming." Cooper ran to him, pressing his head into the boy's chest, whining, licking his hands. Zach hugged him weakly, but his eyes stayed fixed on the tunnel behind them. "It took Mom. It took her down the other way." Please leave!" "Before it finds you." The ground vibrated, hard. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Small rocks rolled across the floor. The lead ranger grabbed Zach gently. "We're not leaving you. Show us where your mom is." Zack pointed to a narrow crack in the stone. She went through there. It pulled her inside. I heard her scream. The second ranger turned toward the crack, just as a deep thud shook the chamber. Once, twice. Something massive was moving. Zack's voice shrank to a whisper. "It knows you're here." Cooper barked. A furious, desperate warning. The light in the chamber flickered. A shadow appeared at the tunnel entrance. Tall and thin, silent as smoke, its white eyes glowing through the dark. It had found them. The creature filled the tunnel entrance, its tall frame folding unnaturally to fit inside. White eyes glowed in the dark, unblinking, fixed on Zack. Cooper snarled violently, placing himself between the boy and the creature, fur standing up like a ridge of spikes. The lead ranger raised his weapon. "Stay behind me." But Zack shook his head frantically. "No, don't shoot!" "It makes them angry." "Them?" the second ranger whispered. Before Zack could answer, the creature stepped forward, not walking, gliding, its limbs brushing the stone walls, fingers scraping grooves into the rock. The chamber vibrated with each movement, a low hum pulsing through the floor. Cooper barked again, louder, sharper, his body trembling but refusing to back down. Zack clung to the lead ranger's sleeve. "It doesn't want you. It wants me. It took Mom because she tried to stop it." The lead ranger tightened his grip. "We're all getting out of here. Stay behind us." The creature tilted its head slightly, as if examining them. The white glow in its eyes flickered. And the hum in the room grew stronger, shaking the air. The second ranger whispered, "It's calling the others?" Zack's face went pale. "They're coming!" A distant echo answered, deep inside the tunnels. One thud, then another, then many. Cooper barked at the crack in the wall where Zack had pointed earlier, the place where Darcy disappeared. The lead ranger understood. "That's the way out. That's where she is." He grabbed Zack's arm gently. "We go, now." Zack hesitated, terrified. "It's too small. It's too tight." "It knows you'll try." The creature stepped closer, its long arm reaching toward them. Zack screamed. Cooper lunged. The dog slammed into the creature's arm, knocking its reach aside, snarling with a fury the rangers had never seen. The creature recoiled, its body bending in unnatural angles, head twisting as if confused. The lead ranger shouted, "Go, through the crack!" Zack squeezed into the narrow opening first, Cooper right behind him, digging at the ground to push himself through. The rangers followed, forcing their bodies into the tight stone gap. Behind them, the creature let out a screeching wail, a distorted, broken sound that shook loose soil from the walls. The chamber trembled. The thuds from deeper in the tunnels grew louder. Many footsteps, many voices, the humming intensifying. The creature slammed itself against the stone, trying to reach them, its long fingers scraping inches from the second ranger's boot. "Move!" the lead ranger yelled. They pushed deeper into the crack, stone tearing at their jackets, the gap growing smaller and smaller as they crawled. Then, through the darkness ahead, a faint blue light appeared. A new chamber, an exit, or another trap. The blue light grew brighter as they crawled, flickering against the narrow stone walls, like a heartbeat pulsing in the dark. Zack squeezed out first, stumbling into a wider chamber. Cooper scrambled after him, shaking dust from his fur, ears pinned back with fear. The rangers emerged last, panting, clothes torn, hands scraped raw from the tight crawl. The chamber was nothing like the others. Smooth stone floors, perfectly round walls, strange markings glowing faintly in the blue light, circling the room like warnings or invitations. But at the far end of the chamber, half collapsed, Half swallowed by the rock was another passage, and from inside it, they heard a faint voice. A woman's voice. "Zach?" Zach froze. His breath caught in his throat. "Mom?" He ran toward the sound, but Cooper barked sharply, blocking him. Eyes locked on the darkness. Zach trembled. "That's her. I know it's her." The lead ranger stepped forward cautiously. "Darcy? Darcy, can you hear me?" Moments of silence passed. Then, "Help, please." The same words, the same tone, the same cracks in the voice, exactly the same. Zach's tears dried instantly. His face drained of color. "That's not her," he whispered. "It's copying her again," Cooper growled. Low and dangerous, fur bristling. The second ranger aimed his flashlight at the collapsed passage, and something moved inside. A pale hand, thin fingers, reaching out slowly, stretching toward them through the rubble. "Zach, come here." The voice was clearer now, but wrong. Like a recording filtered through static. Zach backed away, shaking his head. No, she wouldn't talk like that. She wouldn't. The hand retreated into the darkness. Then a different sound emerged. Footsteps. Soft, unsteady, human. A shadow appeared in the passage. Not tall like the creatures. Not crawling. Walking. A woman stepped into the blue light. Dirty, exhausted, shaking. Darcy, her real eyes, her real breath, her real voice. "Zach?" Zach screamed with relief. "Mom!" She sprinted forward, falling to her knees, pulling Zach into her arms, crying into his hair. Cooper whined and licked her hand, tail wagging desperately. The rangers stared, emotion hitting them like a wave. They found her. Alive. Darcy looked up at them, eyes full of fear but full of life. "Thank you. Thank you for finding us." "I thought—" A sound cut her off, a deep echoing hum. The walls of the chamber vibrated, dust falling from the ceiling. The rangers snapped back into survival mode. The humming grew louder. Closer. Darcy's face twisted with terror. No, it followed me. It always follows." Zach squeezed her tighter. "Mom, what do we do?" Darcy looked at Cooper, her voice breaking. "Follow him. He's the only one who knows the way out." The chamber trembled as the humming grew louder, vibrating the stone under their feet. Something huge was moving in the tunnels behind them. Cooper barked sharply and ran to a narrow split in the wall, pawing at it urgently. Darcy grabbed Zach's hand. "Go! That's the way out!" The rangers pulled her up. "Can you move?" "Yes," she gasped. "Just don't stop." They slipped into the crack, the tunnel squeezing around them. Behind them, the chamber shook again, followed by the sound of footsteps. Many footsteps. Fast. Cooper sprinted ahead, his paws splashing through shallow water. Darcy and Zach crawled after him. The rangers closed behind. A piercing screech echoed down the passage. The creatures had found their trail. "Don't look back!" the lead ranger shouted. The tunnel sloped upward, air turning colder. Their hands scraped on jagged rock, clothes tearing, knees bruising. Then, a faint silver glow appeared above them. Moonlight. Cooper barked wildly, tail wagging despite the terror. They burst out of the opening and collapsed onto forest ground, gasping, gulping cold night air. "We made it," the second ranger whispered. But Darcy shook her head. "No, they follow. They always follow." The forest fell silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. Then a deep thud rolled from the cave behind them, followed by another. Trees shook. Birds took off in panic. A hollow cry echoed out of the cave, long and booming. Zach clutched his mother's jacket. "It's coming." It knows we escaped. The lead ranger lifted his radio. Base, we need backup. Static. Harsh, crushing static. Darcy trembled. It kills signals. It kills anything that helps you. Cooper growled, staring at the cave mouth. A tall shape stepped out, white eyes glowing. Then a second. Then a third. The lead ranger whispered, "There's more than one." Darcy's voice cracked. "They waited for us to leave." Cooper barked again, but this time the bark was urgent. A clear command. He turned left and sprinted into the trees. Darcy gasped. "He's heading for the river." "They won't cross running water." The creatures stepped closer, moving in unnatural slow jerks. The humming grew stronger, shaking the earth. "Go!" the lead ranger shouted. "Follow Cooper!" They ran into the forest, branches whipping their faces, with the creatures pouring out of the cave behind them. They ran through the forest, branches tearing at their arms, breath burning in their lungs. Cooper led the charge, darting between trees, glancing back to make sure Zach and Darcy kept up. Behind them, the creatures crashed through the undergrowth. Not fast, but steady, their footsteps heavy, their humming rattling the leaves. Darcy gasped. "They get stronger at night. Keep moving." The second ranger looked back and froze. White eyes glowed between the trees, closing in from several directions. "Not chasing, herding," the lead ranger shouted. "They're trying to cut us off. Stay with Cooper." The dog sprinted to a fallen log and shot underneath it. Zach followed, Darcy crawling after him, the rangers squeezing through last. A creature slammed into the log moments later, splitting it in half like rotten wood. Zach screamed. Darcy pulled him close. Cooper barked furiously, pushing them onward. Moonlight flickered above the treetops. The sound of rushing water began to rise, faint at first, then clearer. The river. "We're close!" Darcy cried. "Just a little farther." But the creatures changed direction. Their humming deepened, vibrating the ground, making the trees tremble. One stepped into their path. Tall, thin, limbs swaying, blocking the route to the river. Cooper skidded to a stop, growling, hackles raised. The creature tilted its head, its face twisted, flesh stretching, bones cracking, until it formed Zach's voice. "Help me," Zach whimpered, burying his face in Darcy's chest. "That's not me. Don't listen." The lead ranger pointed his weapon. "Stay back!" The creature didn't move. It just stared, waiting, as if daring them to approach. Then Cooper lunged. He jumped at the creature's leg, teeth sinking into pale flesh. The creature screeched, a sound like tearing metal. It kicked Cooper aside, sending him tumbling through the leaves. Zach screamed. "No!" Cooper staggered to his feet, limping, but alive. The lead ranger seized the opening. "Move now!" They bolted around the wounded creature as it twisted on the ground, limbs jerking, voice distorting into broken screams. The river's roar grew louder. Fresh air rushed against their faces. Another creature dropped from a tree above them, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. They skidded to a stop, trapped. Behind them, the wounded mimic. Ahead, the one blocking the path. Cooper barked once, a sound full of pain and defiance, then charged straight ahead, leading them toward a narrow gap in the trees. A sliver of moonlit water gleamed beyond it. The river. Darcy grabbed Zach's hand. The rangers followed, Behind them, the creatures shrieked as one, a sound of fury and hunger, and charged after them. The river roared ahead of them, moonlight flashing off the rushing water. Cooper limped toward it, barking desperately, urging them forward. "Go!" the lead ranger yelled. "Running water now?" Darcy pushed Zach ahead, the boy splashing into the shallows. The rangers followed, boots sinking into the icy current. Behind them, the creatures burst through the trees, their white eyes blazing in the dark. They stopped at the riverbank, bodies twisting, limbs jerking, as if something held them back. The humming grew violent, the ground shaking. One creature stepped toward the water, then recoiled, hissing, its skin blistering where the water touched. "They can't cross!" Darcy cried. "They're afraid of it." The creatures paced the shoreline, moving side to side, trapped on the far bank. Zach clung to his mother. "Mom, will they stop?" Darcy shook her head. "No, they wait." The lead ranger scanned the forest. "We need to follow the river downstream. Fast. They'll shadow us." Cooper barked weakly. Limping but determined, he kept to the water, never stepping back onto dry land. They moved carefully along the river, the current soaking their clothes, the cold stealing their breath. On the opposite bank, the creatures followed, perfectly matching their pace, not rushing, watching, waiting, Zach whispered. "Why do they want us?" Darcy's voice cracked. "They don't want us. They want anyone who goes deep enough to hear them." The forest thinned, and the river widened. Lights flickered in the distance. Headlamps, voices, rangers. "Over here!" the lead ranger shouted. "Contact! We have survivors!" Backup raced toward them, flashlights cutting through the dark. The creatures froze in the trees, their white eyes fading back into the black. The humming stopped, just like that. Cooper collapsed on the riverbank, exhausted. Zach dropped to his knees, hugging him tightly. Darcy sobbed, her arms wrapped around her son. The forest grew quiet, too quiet. A ranger approached Darcy gently. "You're safe now. It's over." But Darcy shook her head, eyes full of fear. "No, it isn't. They don't stay in the tunnels. They watch the trees. They listen. And when someone goes missing out here," she looked back at the dark line of forest, "it's because the forest isn't empty." Cooper lifted his head. Ears perked and growled softly, a warning, directed at the trees. Far away, deep in the woods, a single white glow flickered once, then vanished. The lead ranger whispered, "We need to seal this area." Darcy stared at the forest, her voice barely a breath. "You can't seal what doesn't have a door." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves. The forest whispered back. The creatures were gone from sight, but not gone. Not ever.